when you had that conversation with the writers of the show that Rosa was going to be able to have the same identification as you as a personal person,
Hmm.
what was that conversation like in knowing that now you are one of both you and your character are one of the few who are out there? How does that feel?
I mean, it's really like it's amazing, and I have to give so much credit to Dan Gore, who's our creator. Dan Dan was so respectful and incredible during that process. The first thing he did was even ask me if it was something that I was interested in exploring with the character, which I thought was incredibly respectful to come to
Yes.
a queer actor and say, like, look, we're thinking about developing your character in this way. Do you feel comfortable exploring that storyline with us? And if you do, can you please tell us from your perspective what you think the story should contain, what it should explore, what you're interested in exploring? Can you tell us your own coming out story? I mean, he is the biggest and best ally that you could ask for. I mean, like, that's what you want, right? Is to work with
Mm-hmm.
people that you feel are your allies. And he is 100% a queer ally and an incredible person. And, not for nothing. I mean, what I think people forget a lot of the time is that he is the creator of the show. So he could have put this anywhere he wanted to in the season. And guess where he put it? He put it in 2 episodes, not
Yep.
just 1, but 2. So
And then
not
also
only
brought
did he
on
do
Gino
that,
Rodriguez to be your love interest.
yeah, but not only did he do that, but like he made the episodes, the coming out episodes, there was episodes 99 and 100. So he knew that there was going to be press around the 99th episode. He
Yeah.
already knew it. It was a given. It wasn't like anybody was going to be able to bury this anywhere, This was
Mm-hmm.
going to become part of the Bible of our show, part of the fabric of it. And I just thought that was so absolutely subtle and brilliant. And like, you know, there's a lot of people watching that 99th episode, and that
Yeah.
there was a reason he put it in that episode. Like I mean, I just think like our writers as a collective group, but particularly Carly Hallam and Justin Noble, who wrote that episode, just were absolutely amazing and very, very open with like initial drafts of the script and things that they were planning and they wanted to see, and they had so many questions about like how I saw things and what I wanted to explore and things that I thought were important. Like what I've heard a lot in the Latin community is that there's this sort of push for us, that those of us who identify as bi or pan, to choose,
Mm-hmm.
like we don't care if you're gay, but just choose a side, like choose, or
And then
the
just
erasure of
bi-erasure in
something,
general
which
from
is
other members of the LGBT
exactly,
community who say, oh,
exactly,
this
which
is
is
your
like,
stepping stone to figure out what you actually
right,
are, when that's not true at all.
right. That awful quote from Sex and the City, which is one of my favorite shows, but that awful quote where she's like, "Oh, Binus is just a layover on the way to Gay Town," which is like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a horrible, horrible thing to put out in the
It
world.
really
Like,
is.
as funny as that joke might be to you, like it what it effectively is like this group of people doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Their sexuality isn't a real thing, which is like that's really damaging.
And was that part of the
Um,
impetus of coming out yourself, just knowing that there was this bi-erasure and there was so many people just being cast aside and not being at all validated for who they really are?
I mean, I think that's a wonderful, amazing byproduct of what ended up happening. But I honestly, like, I had been out to some of the important people in my life, like my sister, my friends. So when I tweeted that initial tweet, which was like a retweet of something that Aubrey Plaza said in an interview, where she said, I just fall in love with girls and guys. I can't help it. And I was like, oh, me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think about how big of a moment it might be, because I just wasn't thinking that way. And then I think it was because a lot of people that were watching our show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine specifically, were thinking of Rosa as maybe a queer character, and then they saw that the actress playing her identified as queer. So that's sort of how it kind of, I think, became like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, like, some of what I've realized since coming out is that the representation is still so lacking, and people are so hungry for it that it now is like it's really valuable to me to be so vocal and open, because there's lots of people in this world that don't have any queer friends or don't have people in their communities that they can go to and feel like comfortable with, either expressing their own sexuality or maybe just even asking questions. Like,
yeah, especially
well,
the Latino people.
I'm not queer, but like, I want to explore this. Or I think Latino culture often, there's like a long history. We can go back into the history of it, which is like, we were colonized, right? Like,
and Catholicism, and people telling you that God hates you.
And yeah, it's like there's a whole structure in place that goes back so far. But what we're left dealing with is the repercussions of that structure, in which like a tightly knit, let's say, community relies a lot of the time on like one of their touchstones. I mean, for me, my parents immigrated to the U.S. when I was 3, and one of my parents' major touchstones was their church. When my family's apartment burned down, when I was living in New York by this time, but my family's apartment burned down, and who helped them? Their church. Like their church is so much a part of their community and the base for their community, and in many ways the base for their lives. And so to have that be such a part of the fabric of who you are, and then at the same time you might be a member of a church in which that church says gay people are going to hell, they're against God, so how do you find your way through that? Like, that's not an easy road, and I don't blame anyone for having a difficult journey through that, be it someone who's out or not. Like, I don't blame my parents for having a difficult time kind of coming to terms with my queerness at all, because I feel like they're doing the best they can. Obviously, I would love for them to open their arms and say, that great line that they wrote for Danny Trejo, which is like, which Rosa says initially, she's like, I want you to say that you love me no matter what.
Yeah. And
like, it's her parents' dead silence in that episode. Like, I think a lot of us have felt that before, where they just are not getting anything back, And of course I want that for myself, but I mean, my parents might not be able to give it to me yet.
Yeah, and that's when I came out, I remember I was so pissed because my dad took like 3 or 4 weeks to collect himself. And I remember talking to my sister and I said, why doesn't Dad just get it? And she said, look, at the time I was 22. She said, you took 22 years to figure out who you are, and you're giving Dad like 22 seconds. You have to allow him to change whatever ideas he had about what life you were going to live. And that's not the easiest process to have. And so I think stuff like that made me realize, like, okay, as far advanced or as further along the road as I am, I can't be so upset for the people who are just starting on that road. At least they're on the road.
Yes, exactly. Like there definitely is room for the frustration, right? Like the feeling of like, I don't understand how you can stand there and look at me as if I'm any different, because I'm exactly the same person I was a moment before I told you that I was
pretty much
gay, lesbian, queer, whatever, But also what I've come to sort of realize is like, my parents are doing the best they can. They're doing the absolute best they can. And for that, I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that, because some people don't have that. Some people just don't have relationships with their parents at all because of their bravery and their willingness to be their full authentic selves, and to realize that will change many of the relationships in their own lives.
That they already have.